Hello you all, I'm BlaqueWitchYaya. Thank you so much for tuning into this video. Today's video is set up a little bit differently because while I tell the story, I want to keep my hands busy. So I have some of my herbs right here that I use to make my crystal dry rub that you could purchase on BlaqueWitchYaya.com to dry cleanse your crystals if you don't have fluoride water on deck all the time. If you have a crystal that ends with ITE and it cannot get wet, this is just the perfect mixture to put on your crystals, to sprinkle it on there and sit it in front of the moonlight or sunlight to get your crystals nice, cleansed, and charged. So I'm going to be making that while we talk about the voodoo doll. And what inspired this video is because I am constantly trying to make it a goal on this channel where I kind of give more clarity to things that's naturally associated with people who are spiritual, people who dive into things that's not necessarily a popular religion. And I say that because usually when you tell someone that you're spiritual, it's usually like, okay, so you do voodoo. It's like nothing else in between. You absolutely positively do voodoo, you do witchcraft, you put spells on people. When in actuality, we're spiritual just to improve ourselves and to give ourselves more guidance. But people just go based off of what they see on movies or what they hear in church or from other people. So they're like, you do voodoo. So I was like, let me talk about the voodoo doll, because usually when you think of voodoo, you think of the voodoo doll. Now, I'm sure most of you guys are familiar with the voodoo doll. It's almost like a symbol now associated with voodoo when it goes so much deeper. But basically, the voodoo doll is a representation of an individual during spell work. And I wanted to state that first because usually when we think of the voodoo doll, it's like, oh my gosh, you just make a doll like somebody and you just sit around and poke needles in it. But a voodoo doll can actually be used for spells that are good as well. Now, for some of y'all, this may be something new because usually voodoo dolls are associated with you want to capture someone. I hope this noise isn't bothering y'all. You want to capture someone. You want to keep someone captive, so you put them in a voodoo doll. But a lot of people have used voodoo dolls to get promotions on jobs, to lose weight. Not necessarily a love spell, even though people do it for a love spell. But, you know, I don't agree with love spells. I feel like people just should naturally love each other, but that's just my perspective. But usually married couples do it as they'll make a voodoo doll of the husband and wife and do a protection ceremony, or have a practitioner do a protection ceremony on their marriage. Not necessarily putting each other under a spell, but just creating clarity and unity between the two of them to protect them in the physical world and the natural world as well. Now, with this voodoo doll, what makes it active is because usually, well, it's supposed to, with the voodoo doll, that you have some type of strain of DNA for the doll. Now, this can be hair, this can be spit, this can be blood, this can be nails. You can actually make the entire doll out of a clothing item of someone. Basically, their energy has to be on the doll to create that spiritual connection, to let the energies, the universe, whoever you're doing this doll under, are just to make the intent that this doll is for this individual. For example, if I was making a voodoo doll of myself, I would put my hair, or I will put some eyelashes, my real eyelashes, or some nails. You want to put something of yours on the doll, or it will literally just be a doll sitting there with no actual purpose. But usually, of course, with media, it's predicted as you just want to cause harm to people. But like I said before, you can do a variety of spells, because as long as you have that person's DNA or your DNA, it's really up to you what you want to do. People have used it to lose weight because they literally have a mini me version of themselves where they can kind of craft what they want to craft because they have that effigy, that representative in the spiritual world. You know, it's kind of like a, what do you call those mini dolls that they make of celebrities? Think of it like that. You want it to look like the person. You want the body shape to be similar. Some people even skip doing a face and just cut out a face of a person and put it on a doll to do what they got to do. But even though it is used for good things and bad things, I always say you want to be careful, especially with voodoo dolls, because in the spiritual world, everything is very literal. Very, very literal. That's why they say spelling is a spell, because what you say can manifest and attach on to people, attach onto you. So you want to be very careful, of course, when you literally have a physical being that's technically you because it has your DNA on it. So for example, I know my boyfriend, the Baron, he posted a little snippet of a weight loss spell on his channel because he felt that you should go to someone that you know or you trust to do it. Because, for example, if you use a voodoo doll for a weight loss spell, you really don't take your time and do it, and you do it in a way where you really, really want the weight loss. You don't care how it happened. You could get sick and lose weight. You could lose a limb and lose weight. You want to make sure you put the right intent and be very, very careful. That's why I think in general as well, you should never do a spell in time of desperation, because usually when you do a spell in the sense of desperation or in the time of desperation, you kind of lose sense of your morals in a way. What you may think about before, you're not thinking about then. The steps you may take to protect yourself, you're not thinking about that then, because you just want to hurry up and have the results. And when it comes to magic, it takes time. You want to take your time to make sure your intent and your clarity is present during the process, because with magic and us having the control to craft our lives, to make things happen, many people can kind of take advantage of it and just try to like fast food it. Like, no, this is a gourmet meal we're creating. We have to take our time, make sure we have the right ingredients, and go from there. So with knowing that that individual, the voodoo doll, is a representation of you, you literally want to treat it like a human being, because whatever you say, whatever you do is going to happen to that doll. And we usually see this depicted on movies when, you know, of course, the national thing of the whole, not even national, international thing of sticking needles in the voodoo doll, and that's about it. Whatever pain happens to the doll will happen to the person, which is true, because like I said, we put that DNA in there, but it goes so much deeper than that. And even when you do a spell or a ritual with the voodoo doll, whether it's yourself or someone else, even discarding of the doll is a step as well. You have to keep the doll away from certain things, because depending on what you're doing and the purpose behind it, I'm always careful with this type of stuff because I never want to give people any ideas. You want to be careful, because there are instances and stories where it ended up being deadly. Like the time, I don't know if you guys know the story of a voodoo doll getting into the mouth of a dog. And yeah. So you want to be careful the way you discard of it, because you're discarding of DNA. So you want to make sure that when you get rid of, I just saw a shadow. Was that my arm? Okay, that was my arm. Oh my gosh. Okay, I saw a reflection in my camera and I was like, what is that? It's my arm. I'm not used to moving like this in videos. So you want to make sure that you take your time with it, because even at the moment you're like, okay, I'm done with this, I don't want to no longer do this, that person's DNA is still on the doll. So you have to make sure that you do the necessary steps to discard it. And I'm going to tell you guys a story of a time that this woman had a voodoo doll of herself that she didn't make, and the steps she took to discard of it, based on a true story. But before we get into that, y'all let me know down below your perspective on voodoo dolls and how you feel about voodoo dolls. I am necessarily not against it. I know some of you may think that I am against it, but due to the fact that it's used for such a variety of things, I know it's not limited to just this person gets on my nerves, so I want to stab them to death. But it can be used for good things as well. Some people use it for physical healing, with pain in their body, with just succeeding in life. When they do their manifestations, they literally depict the voodoo doll in a way that they want to live. They'll do like a little fake version of their home and put the voodoo doll in the home, just to really put more intent to their manifestations. And I feel like with anything with the magic, you have the power to decide whether you're going to use it for good or for bad. And I just feel like it should never be used for bad or taken advantage of. And I also feel if you can solve something in the physical world, don't involve magic. Because sometimes, like I said before, when desperation is there, you may not take your time with the necessary steps, skip a step, then get yourself into more trouble. So if you could solve stuff in the physical world, do that. Magic should be implemented just to empower more stuff and to just make stuff more accessible if you feel like it's kind of out of reach in a physical aspect. But let me tell you guys a story about this couple. We shall call them, let me give them fake names, Jason and Margaret. So Jason, growing up, he was okay. He was decent. He was like an average guy. I'm not talking about looks. I'm just talking about him as a person. He wasn't too bad. He wasn't too good. He was just an average person. But for some odd reason, he never thought he would get married, because this takes place in the 90s. So it was this thing going around. I was born in the 90s. So I kind of missed this phase where they were like, only the pretty Tonys get attention. It was basically like just light-skinned men with wavy hair, I guess. That's the detail in this story. So he was a darker skinned man, and he claims that they weren't in style like that back in the day. So he felt like it would be harder for him to get a woman because of the way he looked. But he finally got married. We'll fast forward. He finally got married to Margaret. He was very, very happy. They were an amazing couple. People just thought that they were just so nice looking. They just meshed well together. They worked good together. She helped him out with everything, like with his company, and she was also being helped by him as well, because he was just a sense of peace for her. They were just a good couple. I'll just say that. But for some odd reason, growing up, that trauma was still sticking with Jason to the point where he felt like it was too good to be true. And Margaret was bad. You hear me? She was like, if you looked at her in the 90s, you would think, okay, so she's about to marry somebody from Boys to Men or Jodeci, or like she's about to marry a celebrity, because she was just so pretty and a lot of men found her attractive. So Jason was just like, why me? And he was already insecure. So once he married her, he did everything he could to make sure she was happy, to make sure that she was feeling protected and safe. And Margaret was a simple girl. As long as you treat her right, respect her, and lay it down nicely, she was good to go. But for some reason, Jason just could not get it out his head, like, someone's going to take this from me. So he was familiar with magic, of course, in the area that they grew up. I'm not giving no locations. In the area they grew up, magic is very renowned there. So everybody was pretty familiar with it. So he went to a young lady. She wasn't young, but that's the nice thing to say. She was an older woman, but he went to a young lady and basically told her, like, hey, I really love this girl. I want the best for her, but I just really want us to stay together because I never thought I would be married. I'm finally married. I don't want to do anything to mess this up. I want to keep her. So the woman suggested a voodoo doll to keep her next to him, to make a voodoo doll of her in the area, in the way that he wants her. Do you want her to stay a certain size? Do you want her to stay a certain look? Do you want her to stay youthful? Do you want her to keep cooking for you like she's been cooking for? Like, what do you want? So he was familiar with magic, but he never had all that power in his hands at once. So he made a list. I want her to stay youthful. I love the size she is. She cooks amazing. Keep those skills up. Keep her protected. Keep other men away from her. So he was just laying out everything. I want her to do this. I want her to do that. Blah, 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 right? So the lady got to it. She didn't care. She was getting paid. So she created the doll. And for years, he had the doll. He literally built a homemade house that looked exactly like their house and had her inside of the living room in the miniature house, sitting there with a smile on her face. So the voodoo doll literally looked like just in the house, like no other expression, just hard down, happy and satisfied. So for years, he kept this doll. He kept it safe. He kept it in the home. He kept it inside of his closet, because not only that, they had a really big house. So she didn't find no need to go into his closet. So he kept it in his home, inside his closet, in his little watch chest area at the bottom. It was only like this big, like the house. It was like very small. So he just kept it in his chest where he kept his watches. So he ended up getting a promotion. He had a company, but also worked as well. That's just a detail. So he ended up getting a promotion at this other place. So he was like, okay, I can do that because I work for myself and I work for this company too. So I have no problem with moving. So they decided to move, but he had to start with the job right away. So of course, the person that was left to packing was Margaret. And she packed everything. Everything. So when she got to his closet, at first she wasn't going to do it because she was like, he a little nitpicky. I'll let him do his own closet. But she was like, also, he's working a lot. So let me help him out and pack this stuff up. So as she began to pack all of his clothes, she began to start packing his watches. She opened the bottom of the cabinet and she seen the miniature house. So she knew that he's into magic, into the spiritual world. And she just thought of it, wow, he literally built the house he wanted before he got it. So this is probably like something nice for him. He probably just built it out to one day have it. He probably had it since he was a kid. So she didn't think anything of it until she picked up the home. The toy home door opened and the doll fell out. So she just assumed it was another toy inside the home, probably his little kid collection that he was embarrassed to share with her because he's been keeping it for years, until she picked up the doll and looked at the face and realized strands of her hair was on the doll because she had really big poofy hair. So she was like, this is poofy hair. Did he manifest me too, or what? But then when she touched the hair, she realized this is not synthetic hair, and I'm sure he doesn't know enough about hair to go buy some human hair. So she looked at the hair. She glanced up in his closet and at the mirror and looked at her hair, and she brought the doll up to her face, and she just got this chilling feeling when she held the doll next to her face. She knew that was a voodoo doll of her. Now let me give y'all a little behind the scenes, okay? So Jason had this voodoo doll, and if you think about it, it was good intention. He finally got the girl of his dream, blah blah blah. To me, you still shouldn't do it, but it seems like it came from an innocent place. But once he realized that the voodoo doll was working, she wasn't going nowhere, she kept telling her girlfriends of how happy and satisfied she was, he was like, so she's gonna be here no matter what. So he took advantage of that. Like I said, he was doing good at his job. He had a big house. So Jason was starting to feel himself a little bit. He grew up as the ugly duckling, but now all of a sudden he got this fine lady on his arm. He got some money in his pocket. He was feeling himself and just decided, well, she's going to be here no matter what because I have the doll. As long as I have the doll, I have her, and that doll's not going nowhere no time soon. So let me enjoy it a little bit. Let me make up for lost times as I was a kid and I couldn't do this, right? Because nobody wanted me. So he got slick with it. Like, he really grew up knowing some stuff. So when he knew that he was going to cheat, he would take a small shoelace, because the doll was very small. He would take a shoelace and use it as a blindfold on the voodoo doll, basically to cover her eyes, being symbolic to, I don't want her to see what I'm about to do right now. So anytime he would go out to cheat, somehow, some way, she had to work late. Somehow, some way, she had to drive her friend home from the restaurant because she got too drunk. It was always something that happened where she wouldn't be at home during that time or in an area to even catch him. So that's just a behind the scenes. Going back to the doll and Margaret for finding the doll. So, like I said, in the area that they grew up in, magic was like, nobody was really ashamed of being spiritual or doing voodoo or whatever. Like, everybody pretty much knew about it. So, of course, she looked at the voodoo doll. She realized it was her. She held it up to her face, got this weird feeling. She knew that that was her energy on the doll. So she continued to look into the house, the miniature house. She saw the shoelace. She even saw many like menstrual cycle materials and supplies, where he would literally, when she gets on her cycle, he would take some of the blood and add it to the doll just to keep her DNA fresh. I'll say that. So she knew exactly what was going on. She was shocked, but she wanted to hurry up and end the energy. And she wanted to see what was going on behind the scenes. She saw the shoelace. She didn't know what it was for, but she was just like, this is weird. Why would he make a voodoo doll of me? And she wasn't really shocked by it because she kind of suspected it, because even though she's an easygoing girl, she just usually felt too relaxed around him. She knew that he was making more money. He was out and about more, but for some odd reason, she never got worried, and she felt like her intuition was slipping. She was like, okay, I trust him, but like, dang, why I trust him so much, So she put the voodoo doll on the counter. She went and grabbed a pair of scissors from the kitchen. I'm giving so much detail, like, she went and grabbed a pair of scissors, and she knew exactly what to do. So she held up the doll very carefully. She cut the hair off of the doll, every single strand. It was a lot. Like, the doll had a mini fro. And she took a piece of her hair and she cut it as well. She went to her bathroom and she burned the hair, and she simply said, I'm taking back my energy that was manipulated during this process. Literally that day. she began to notice small things around the house because he had that voodoo doll, so he was getting sloppy. He was leaving like random jewelry items that belong to females around and just be like, well, she ain't gonna notice it. She gonna be all right. And she just started slowly noticing things as she was packing. Well, what is this? This isn't mine. Where did this come from? Why is this stain in the shirt? She just automatically started to notice more things that day and over time because she wanted to play this out. She wanted to see, okay, so what has he been doing this entire time? Who is my husband? Was this made with good intention? Was he just scared to lose me, or what was going on? So fast forward over time, she just began to see all the little sneaky things he was doing. But mind you, she put that doll right back into that house with her hair going. So he never checked on the doll because they were still in the middle of packing. So she just packed it up. He noticed it was gone, but he's like, well, she didn't say anything, so she probably didn't know what it was. And she just started to notice things, but she kept playing her role, playing it cool. So I'm going to skip over some parts. And we'll just get to the point where he found out that she found out about the doll. And, you know, she knew some magic too. So she made sure karma was set forth for him. They did get a divorce because she found out this man is a dog. Oh my gosh. So she did get a divorce. She set karma forth on his behalf. I don't want to give nobody no ideas, but just know karma was set forth upon him. And yeah, so she felt that even though she got rid of the doll, even though she asked for her energy back, she just, for some odd reason, always felt behind on something. She always felt behind, and she just felt guilty that she let her guards down so much and she didn't keep herself protected because, like I said, she trusted him so much, and usually she knows how to keep herself protected spiritually. That's why she was such a simple girl. Like, you don't have to have much to impress me. Just have the little simple things, and I got my own back. I got myself. That's why she wasn't impressed with all of the flashy stuff of the world, because she knew of the more importance. But she just felt that, dang, I'll let myself slip. Usually I'm good with stuff like this. So till this day, she found love in other places. She's good to go. But she just always feels a sense of guilt that she didn't catch on to it longer. And it's like, girl, it's okay. Like, if you find yourself under spiritual attack, and this is a lesson in general, if you find yourself under spiritual attack, don't feel guilty like you're doing something wrong. Just take it as a lesson and move on. But yeah, I won't say what happened to him, because I feel like if I do, you guys will be able to catch on to who this happened to. That is just an example of how using a voodoo doll to your advantage, and on the outside looking in, you would think, oh, he was just scared to lose her, but he took advantage of it. And karma had to take care of him, because she knew that anybody who messes with her will have to feel the wrath of her energy as well. So he was up there thinking she just a little dumb old lollygag, just up there chilling, but she knew what she was doing as well. And that's even better, because I feel that even if you're not into spirituality deeply, you feel like you don't know everything, if you don't do nothing else, keep yourself protected, and that will lead you and guide you along the way. So that's why I say you don't have to do spells for everything. You don't have to light candles for everything. Just keep yourself physically and spiritually protected, and your eyes will open to it all. Because it could have been to the point where she didn't find that doll at all, and imagine she would still be there. So I feel like her intuition is still good. She shouldn't feel bad. You shouldn't feel bad that happened to you, because what if you would have never found it? Your intuition led you to the doll. Maybe you had to be in that situation for those couple of years just to teach you a lesson and to protect you from something. So look at it like that. So she shouldn't look at it as her slipping, but a lesson that needed to be learned at the time, because everything happens for a reason, and nothing bad happened to her. So she should be grateful that she removed herself from that situation before karma kicked in and she was still around, you know, because she wouldn't want to see that. But I'm going to continue to make my dry rub. But in the meantime, let me know down below what you guys think about the voodoo doll. Have you ever made a voodoo doll? How do you feel about voodoo dolls? Have you found out, like Margaret, that someone made a voodoo doll for you? Let me know down below, and we will continue to have this discussion as well. And my boyfriend, the band, is going to do more in-depth things when it comes to the voodoo doll and just the spiritual factors that's behind it as well. But thank you guys so much for tuning into this video. Make sure you get your dry rub as I'm crafting it right now from BlaqueWitchYaya.com. But like I always say, as above, so below, as within, so without, as the universe, so the soul. Until next time, you guys, Ashe, baby.